Good evening and welcome to Impact 2020. My name is Nathaniel and we're here to talk about social injustice. We're here to talk about uh, racial inequality. We're here to talk about what's going on in our communities right now. So I was told by one of our producers that we don't really get into it enough. We don't really go hard enough on our questions. And so we're gonna switch it up a little bit more. And we have a guest today who we're gonna ask a little bit tougher questions. But before we get started, we're going to talk about just real briefly about John Lewis, the fact that he passed away Friday at the age of 80, a titan, as many people called it, in the civil rights movement. And one of the things that John Lewis talked about was good trouble. And with all of the things that we have going on right now, the protests, the rallies, everything that's going on, is it time for good trouble? And so, anyone who may have a question or comment, please feel free to type the comments in the comment section. We will definitely address them as we go along. So let me bring in Chris Wilder out of North Carolina. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. So let's jump right into it. John Lewis, good trouble. As you look around North Carolina, you look around your community, you see what's going on television. What is good trouble, and what kind of good trouble should we get into? I'm not even asking of whether or not we should be getting into good trouble. We need to get into good trouble. What do you consider good trouble? Is it going out and protesting? Is it tearing these statues down? What is your definition of the good trouble that we need to get into?
Well, first off, much respect and love and peace to Representative John Lewis. He was a civil rights icon. A lot of the things that have been made available to me has been because of people like him. And so he was just in the forefront. So, I want to, give him a rest in peace and comfort to his family that the things that he did on this earth are going to continue on for the foreseeable futures. But when he talks about good trouble, it's just standing up when you see something that's wrong in the neighborhood, something that's wrong in your family, something that's wrong, and it's wrong, and everybody in your vicinity knows it's wrong. But sometimes people have a tendency to see things wrong and just like, well, that's not my problem. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna let it slide. But what John Lewis, I think, was, and what his purpose was to say, if you see something wrong, say something about it. Yep. Deal with the situation. Don't just let things happen, because if you let them happen for somebody else, when it turns around and you're the one that's facing the trouble, you're going to expect or want somebody to stand up and work out for you. So I think, just taking action, if you feel that getting out and going in the streets and protesting is getting in good trouble, that's fine. That's what you want to do. But I think a lot of people kind of take the easy route, and, they try to take the path of least resistance. And John Lewis wasn't about the least resistance. And if you know anything about his history, he oftentimes looked for the roughest way to get something done, because that would ruffle the most feathers. It would cause the most stir. And once you stir the pot up, that's when you can start working on, addressing the issues and the problems and the concerns that people have. So good trouble, just stand up.
Well, let's move on to tearing stuff up. We got a lot of people out here right now who have decided, hey, let's go tear some stuff up. Now, on the one end, you could sit back and you could say, man, that's terrible, man. All of this stuff is getting towed up. Businesses are getting towed up. Neighborhoods are getting towed up. Neighborhoods are not really getting towed up. So let me just put that out there. On the other hand, you can sit back and say, well, when we were sitting here being all nice, nothing happened. I mean, we've been talking about monuments for years. We've been talking about the flag for years. Nothing happened. And now that things are getting towed up, change is occurring. Does that mean the way to get it done is to tear it up?
You know what? A lot of people feel like tearing stuff up is a way to grab attention. And if you grab attention, sometimes that's the best way sometimes to get somebody's, to get somebody to care about what you're dealing with, is to show them that you're mad, and show people that you're mad by doing something that's very, very threatening to their situation. So I don't agree with the rioting. Matter of fact, I'm going to speak against it, because most of the rioting that's occurring, it's just blind rage, and you don't have any target. You don't have any focus. There's nothing that's coming out of it other than the destruction of somebody else's property. So I'm never going to be an advocate of destroying something blindly, with no real outcome in mind. So, but it's something that you got to address, because people have been mad for a long time. And when it starts to get pent up, and with the COVID situation, everybody's being locked down, and you're seeing all this on TV. You're seeing George Floyd getting murdered on TV, and then you see and hear about Breonna Taylor, and then you start seeing other images, Ahmaud Arbery. You start seeing everything, and it just keeps coming. And that's the way it seemed to me, like George Floyd. Then I hear about Breonna Taylor. Then, a young man goes jogging, gets killed, and then they start bringing up the Tamir Rices and your Trayvon Martins, and you start going back in your head and seeing all of this and just feeling it. And so I understand where that anger, where that anger is coming from and where that frustration is coming from. And that's when I think, the older, mature, and more experienced crowd needs to come in and start talking and guiding some of these young, angry individuals, man, because we got some young chiefs out there that don't have the guidance to take things forward, and actually put some purpose behind their rage. I don't know if I'm still on. I know you blanked out. Oh, everyone can still see and hear me. So, but yeah, I think I'm gonna keep talking.
Okay. Seems like we may have lost Chris there. And so while we have, let's see, go to one of our questions, which is, what would you say about how much they expose the blacks being killed and brutalized? Do you feel like the media puts that out because they know it will trigger someone to actually act out in rage? That's a that's a good point. You know what? Sometimes I think they do put out some of this information to make us act out. The more enraged and the more upset we get, the more we'll do. I can say for me, for example, when I see some of the violence and some of the things that are going on out there, it does make me want to get involved. It is a cycle, or it is a trap that you can be put through. So yeah, that is one of the things. So now we're going to go and we're going to talk about a specific story that just happened here in the news not too long ago, and I don't know how many people actually know about this. But this picture right here is a picture of William Marcus Wilson. And William Marcus Wilson is basically, he's in jail now. He's been in jail since June the 17th. And I don't know how many of you have actually heard this story, but this is the story of a gentleman who was in the car at 12:30 a.m. Him and his girlfriend went to Taco Bell to get some food. And on their drive home, they experienced a group of, what their lawyer said was a group of white gentlemen in a truck, a Silverado. And they came and were driving beside Mr. Wilson, who is in a smaller car, a Ford Focus. They were yelling racial things. They were yelling, of course, the N-word, racial slurs. They were saying, "Your lives don't matter." His girlfriend, who was in the car, they said that you are an in lover. They threw objects out the car and then even tried to run the car off the road. Now, remember, I said that the white gentlemen were in a pickup truck, in a Silverado. They were in a Ford Focus. And so Mr. Wilson, with his legally registered firearm, shot back at the truck. And from what he said, he defended his life, or his attorney said defended his life. As a result, one of the passengers in the truck, 17-year-old Haley Hutchinson, was struck and died from her gunshot wounds. They said it was 2 to 3 shots that they shot in there. Now, if you look at the picture of Mr. Wilson, he's actually biracial. His mother is white. But the question is not about him. The question more so is, can a black man, a black person, use the stand your ground rule or the stand your ground law? Well, he was immediately arrested. Well, not immediately arrested. This happened on June 14th. He was arrested on June 17th and has been there ever since. And we look at other occurrences or other cases like this, and we see people who, they kill a black man and they're not in jail for months. And so as this trial goes on, this is a live situation. This isn't something that happened, years ago. This just happened. He's been in jail since June 17th. This incident happened on June 14th. The question is, can a black man, can a black person use stand your ground the same way a white person can use stand your ground? Right now, it's been seen that no, that's not the reality. We don't have that same justice. And so one of the questions is, what do we do? Do we have an opportunity where we can use stand your ground? How do we make sure that the rights and the laws that others abide by, we also get privy to? So we've lost our guest. So I will go ahead and discuss further the situation. In reality, they've had other people who've tried to use stand your ground laws, over the years, unsuccessfully. We had a young lady, her name was Marissa Alexander, and she spent 6 years in jail. And what she did was she shot her gun in the air as a warning shot against an abusive spouse who was trying to come at her. She tried to use stand your ground. They said no. She didn't even kill anybody. And she was put in jail for 6 years. And so, Chris, the question is, can a black man use stand your ground? We've seen that it's no. And what should we do to make sure that we get fair treatment in the law? What should we do?
Well, I mean, that's a question I can't answer, man. We've been working on trying to get equal rights since you know, African people have been in this country. So I guess it just has to be one of those things that, you know, we really start to focus on, you know, and direct our energies towards trying to solve. You know, before we got cut off, we were talking about the protest and all that, but the protesting is a good start. That's how you gather your support. That's how you get people to recognize what your issue is. But now we need to start coming together, you know, in our communities and really come up with a platform of issues that we want to have addressed. And this Stand Your Ground law has been working against Black people, you know, really since its inception. When they first started, it's okay, you know, you have a firearm, you can protect and defend yourself. But now when a Black man, a young Black man, uses the law in within the way that it was written, I mean, it's not a whole lot of, you know, trying to figure out, well, he really didn't have this, he didn't have that. No, it's the way the law was written was the way he defended himself and the way he defended his girl, I believe, with him. He had his girlfriend with him.
Right, his girlfriend.
So, you know, the law was written for that particular purpose, you know, but it becomes an assault in his case because he's a Black man shooting at another white man. So that's one of those things we definitely need to work on. It's because of the long history of African American men and women being treated, you know, at a second-class status.
Yeah.
And
we actually have a comment that says we have to actually know the law the correct way so that we can use the force against them when it comes to our race. And so I do think that that's one of the issues as well. We oftentimes we kind of know what the law is, but maybe we don't know it the same way. We don't know it with the same force, and also we don't necessarily have the same type of representation, legal representation sometimes that other people have. And even further.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Also, to chime in, it says he feels like the law wasn't even written for us, and that's exactly what it is. The law is not written for people who look like us.
And Brother Jones, I might jump in on that. The law was actually written with us in mind as being the offenders, and so the law was written to protect white society from Black society. But you're absolutely right. It was not written for us.
All right, so let's get into it in a little sticky situation. So Nick Cannon. For people who don't know who he is, Nick Cannon is an entertainer. I think it's The Voice that he does. No, America's Got Talent. I'm not sure.
He did America's Got Talent.
Did America's Got Talent and Wilding Out, his show. He got in trouble for making some comments. They call them anti-Semitic comments. Deshaun Jackson is another person who just got in trouble for criticizing Jewish people as well. So I ask you this. We sit back and we talk about there's underrepresentation on television. We talk about discrimination and systemic discrimination in different avenues and areas. But oftentimes, we're directly talking about white people. And some of these white people are Jewish. Is it anti-Semitic? Is it something that we should shy away from, criticizing Jewish people who may be ones who are oppressing us just because they're Jewish? Do we have to tiptoe around that, or are we actually being anti-Semitic and we can't criticize? So if they're the oppressor and we're saying, hey, look, y'all are oppressing us, is that inappropriate?
This is what I'm going to say. I'm no anti-Semite. I I have a great deal of respect for their faith and their history. But you have to look at it from the eyes that you have to look at things from other people's perspectives. And so to speak out against, if you speak the truth against the entity that you see, it's still your truth. And I think the problem is that in America now, our culture has become so ultra sensitive, so that when you say things, I mean, even 20 years ago, some of these comments wouldn't even became an issue. You know, we would have never heard about Deshaun Jackson's, Twitter rant if this was 10 years ago, probably, but in this cancel culture that we have, anybody that says anything that could possibly make anybody feel like they're mildly offensive, that person is automatically attacked, and it seems to be very targeted. Again, I guess I'm taking it to race, targeted at African American males. Kevin Hart, a few years ago was set to host the Oscars and was not able to host the Oscars, or pulled out of it because they want him to apologize for some anti-gay comments that he made, or insensitive comments he made against gay people years before, he got the Oscar job. So I think, what we really need to do is, instead of just getting out in public and just saying, yo, that was cruel, that was rude, that was disrespectful, it was offensive, you're anti-Semite, you hate black people, or you're a racist. Instead of us doing that, we need to start having more conversations with people. And so instead of trying to just put people on blast, get somebody from the Jewish community, go talk to Deshaun Jackson. The Eagles have enough money. I'm pretty sure they can find somebody that's willing to talk to Deshaun Jackson and say, look, this is what you said. This is how I feel about it. And have a dialogue. And the only way you can understand the way somebody feels about something is to honestly have a conversation with them. And if they're honest with you, you can walk away from that situation understanding something more about yourself, and you can be better in the future. But so just throwing people out.
How can? All right, so we have a comment which was saying, he can get in a lot of heat, but basically the entertainers are slaves, and they, if they speak the truth, they get shunned, and they're forced to apologize. So should we, you, myself, any other black man, black person, black woman, any other person who supports our cause, should we be out trying to defend those individuals? So when people are calling them anti-Semitic, when people are trying to push them down, and when they're trying to, and we got to be clear, there's different people make different conversations. If your conversation is, hey, you're over the entertainment industry and you are the ones who are holding us back when it comes to the entertainment industry, doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not, should we be entertaining them? Defending them? Because what you're saying, I get, is that everybody should be a little less sensitive. You're not gonna get certain, like, you can't say anything about Israel. You can't say anything about certain people. So, as good as comment, but what do we do? I'll say it this way: if there's anybody who should be able to talk about different folk, there's Armenians who had their own Holocaust. There are Jews who've had their own Holocaust. Native Americans who've had a Holocaust based on what white Americans have done. But if anybody can talk about any of these situations, it's us. It's black people. We've had countless lives that have been lost. So what do we do? What do we do? Do we bite our tongue, or should we be able to be attacked for that, or is it our responsibility to push back? Because how do we have a conversation about oppression if the people who are oppressing us are saying, hey, you can't talk about me because of my background?
Well, I guess I'm radical when it comes to this, and my answer is going to be really radical. I don't know if a lot of people can get with it, but you know what? we've had a strong history in African American, in African American history in our culture. We have a strong history of being the creators of American culture. American culture runs through us. Historically, we were the first entertainers on this continent. We were the first musicians. We formed the first bands. We were the first chefs. All of the things that this country calls their culture, American culture, came through us. And so when we're talking the music industry, movies and television, even the media, we have a great deal of power. And Robert Johnson understood that, and he created BET. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my solution, long-term solution, you know what? If we feel like we need to bite our tongues, if we feel like we're being held back, you know what? We have enough people. We got billionaires. Jay-Z's a billionaire. Beyonce's a billionaire. Nick Cannon's got money. We got money. We got enough people to start an entire African-American led media corporation. And then you know what? If I don't want to be on, if I don't want to, deal with the problems of the people within Hollywood, you know what? Take the hood. We'll bring our hood to the media and then profit off our own creative endeavors instead of, having to, tiptoe and dance and bite our tongues and take, treatment that we don't feel is fair. Let's move to the place where we create our own. And then we don't have to deal with, what they say and we don't have to bite our tongues when, issues come up. Then we can deal with things at our level with our people. But that's radical. I mean, how many people are willing to step up and do that? I'm going to call Jay-Z out on here. Jay-Z, you're a billionaire. Come on. Black Hollywood, it's in your hands, son.
All right. As our time goes along, normally at the end, I bring it back and I ask a specific question about what the church, more so the Black church, should be doing. I'm going to skip that, and we're going to come for some people. Recently, there were some Black students and staff at Liberty University who decided that they could no longer be there because the president of Liberty University, Jerry Falwell Jr., wore a face mask with the governor from Virginia when he wore blackface. I'll say this to those individuals who left the university saying, that was racially insensitive. I don't know if things will ever change. To those individuals who have been sitting in churches run by people who support this current president, Black people who've been sitting in churches run by people who support this current president, and people who've been hearing this stuff, my response is, where you been the last 20 years? Like, if you at Liberty and you just realized how Jerry Falwell feels, I don't understand the word. And so my question to you, Chris, my question to you is for all of these Black people who are just acting all surprised and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that my pastor supports Donald Trump, or oh my gosh, I can't believe that Jerry Falwell is not down for the Black people. What is your comment to them who've been sitting in these churches and swearing that these guys and girls who are giving them the word of God are actually leading them down a bad path of racism?
Well, you got to understand who you're dealing with. I picked up along the way. I want to say it probably came from Pastor Cooper, Roscoe Cooper Jr., that you always have to recognize who you are. That's the essentials to life. You got to recognize who you are. Mm-hmm. You got to recognize where you are. Mm-hmm. You got to recognize who you're dealing with. And then you got to recognize what you're doing. And so if you went to Liberty University and you didn't know anything about Jerry Falwell and how and the way he spoke and the way his rhetoric. That's a shame on you, because his rhetoric hadn't changed, and his son speaks through the same rhetoric that he had. You know, there's plenty of HBCUs out there. You know what? You won't have to worry about any racial insensitivities at a HBCU. You know, and as far as blacks going to, you know, I guess these, I don't know what you call these congregations, that I guess these mixed race churches. When you look and you sit down and you look at the pulpit and you see white deacons, white trustees, white minister of music, all white people in the choir, maybe a few black people in the choir. The best singers actually are probably the black people in the choir. But then you have that, and then the pastor's white, the assistant pastor's white, and you may have an associate pastor somewhere down the line, like number 3 or number 4. And then you get upset when they're racially insensitive towards you. I mean, you're dealing with people that don't recognize your race. They don't recognize you. And, you know, we need to go to churches and start, instead of just going to these big churches because they got good singing or because, you know, they have a big following, a lot of members, go to churches that connect with you. And, you know, these big multi-denominational mixed race churches are good if that's who you connect with. Right. But if you don't connect with them, why are you spending your time there? You know, God has plenty of churches. He has plenty of men and women that he's, you know, that have been blessed to serve. Go connect with somebody that connects with you.
Yeah. I
connect with a school.
Yeah, that was great. We had a comment that was reminding that Jerry Falwell wouldn't allow interracial dating. Like, he was not for that, and pushed that along. We have passed our time. I appreciate you being on. Your comments were great. And just to circle back, you know where you're at, know your history, know the people who you're under, know what they're talking about. Because if you are under someone or with some people who are doing some bad things, and you just sitting there smiling and clapping your hands, like you just said, shame on you. I appreciate you coming on. Wish we had a little bit more time, but we don't. Feel free to join us again, Eric. Thank you for all of your comments. We definitely got to get you back on.
Big up there.
Yeah, we're out of time. We'll do this again next week. Thank you for everybody who joined us. Thank you for everybody who commented. This is Impact 2020. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Peace.